Hello, YouTube. I've been doing quite a few videos as of late, since my hiatus, perhaps to compensate to some extent. But in any case, I know that I posted videos, multiple videos, that have since gone away as a result of the fact that I deleted my account and they were unable to restore my old videos. But I previously did post several videos, or multiple videos anyway, on the topic of the body scanners and the molestation pat-downs, the radiation and molestation enhanced, so-called security enhancements at airports here in the United States. And I know that they do have body scanners in various other countries as well, but they are newest in the U.S. They began implementing them after the underwear bomber incident, obviously as a justification, despite the fact that the underwear bomber was led on the plane by the quote-unquote sharply dressed man. The U.S. government admitted they let him on the plane. He actually went through the body scanner and it did not detect his underwear bomb, and it has been determined by others that the body scanners are not able to detect underwear bombs. In any case, that's when they were implemented, December of 2009. That's when, in the U.S., that's when I started ranting about them. The molestation pat-downs are a little more recent. I don't know exactly, 6 months ago maybe. But I wanted to do another comprehensive video on this topic for all of you who think that the molestation and the radiation body scanners are justified, that they're for security, that they're for safety, etc. So I'm going to be partially reading from something I wrote, which is essentially my comprehensive argument against the body scanners and molestation pat-downs. I mean, it's absolutely asinine that I would have to argue against these policies given their intrusive and degrading and just horrific nature generally. I mean, but I'm happy to do it multiple times because this is one of the issues that enrages me at a visceral level, at a real intuitive level, more than virtually anything we see going on today. And, you know, perhaps that's not rational. I mean, certainly there are much worse things going on. I mean, it's horrific that there are much worse things going on than your government molesting you and saying it's for security, but there are much worse things going on, you know, namely massacres in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and now Libya, namely, you know, police murdering blacks with impunity in the ghettos of the United States, in wholesale environmental devastation, and in perpetuation of the industrial economy. I mean, no shortage of horrific things. I've said this before. It's, if you internalize any one of them, you go in fully. It's too much to deal with. But this just really gets me because it affects me personally, and because it's just so because it's new. Like, imperialism is, you know, however many thousands of years old, or you know, U.S. imperialism has been occurring since the U.S.'s inception. You know, first it was the Native Americans, so it wasn't overseas. Perhaps that doesn't fit the definition of imperialism. I'm not entirely sure, but same idea. You know, conquest and domination of other peoples, massacres of other peoples. These things have been going on, not forever in this scale, but since the advent of industrial civilization, essentially, these things have been occurring. Massacres, invasions, etc. So, you know, I suppose I'm more conditioned to it. I mean, it's certainly more horrific than your government molesting you. I mean, I would deem it more horrific, but I'm more accustomed to it, I suppose, and it's not you know, something that I suppose is as likely to change, or I don't know. It's been going on for thousands of years, So this really gets me at a personal level, and it is a horrific escalation in the civil liberties violation realm. So I want to present to you this argument. I hope that some of you are of the opinion that the body scanners and the molestation is justified, that it's for safety, that it's no big deal, etc., etc., and I'm going to attempt to completely deconstruct that absurd myth right here. So, first of all, point number one, the alleged terror threat is essentially entirely unfounded, or at best, highly exaggerated. This can be easily demonstrated. The official story behind 9/11 is an utter fraud. This is the pinnacle of what the government officials point to as to attempt to make the case that there is a significant terror threat that we face. The official story behind 9/11, that propagated by the media and the government, that Al-Qaeda did it alone, that the buildings were brought down as a result of the plane impact and debris and ensuing fires, is an utter fraud. Architect Richard Gage, founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, lucidly and conclusively demonstrates this reality in his 2-hour lecture, which can be viewed at www.ae911truth.org/mov11.htm. Again, www.ae911truth.org/mov11.htm. That's the Architects and Engineers for 911 Truth website. Those who are convinced by the controlled demolition hypothesis that Gage lucidly demonstrates in this lecture must also acknowledge that the government nearly certainly had a role in the attacks, because there is no other reason that they would write a 10,000-page report, the 9/11 Commission report, that it neglects to even mention Building 7, the third building to collapse, the one that was not hit by a plane, and is otherwise a fraud. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, both publish reports as well that amount to scientific fraud. Is it conceivable that these scientific professionals all made a huge mistake? This to me seems incredibly unlikely, to say the least. They have even admitted that they did not consider the controlled demolition hypothesis, that they did not investigate it. Why are they covering this up? I mean, why would they not even investigate the controlled demolition hypothesis that Gage conclusively demonstrates if they aren't deliberately committing an act of scientific fraud and cover-up? Furthermore, NIST admits free fall and attempts to explain it away, but a cursory study of scientific basics will lead you to the conclusion that NIST's explanation is grossly inadequate. So that's point A with regard to refuting the notion that we face a significant terror threat. The official story behind 9/11 is an utter fraud. Point 2, sub-point 2, with regard to demonstrating that we essentially face little to no terror threat, is that the official government-propagated narratives behind most other major terrorist incidents, so-called, in the recent past, have been rightfully called into significant question. Most of these are not as conclusively frauds as 9/11, but they have been, as I said, rightfully called into significant question. This includes the Madrid train bombings, the 7/7 bombings, the underwear bomber of December 2009, the Christmas tree bomber in Portland, the list goes on. Some of these incidents may have been legitimate terrorism, while others most certainly were not. This serves to demonstrate the exaggerated nature of the terror threats. Okay, so those are essentially my arguments with regard, to the fact that the terror threat is unfounded. Yeah, so there are numerous examples that I didn't mention there with regard to incidents that have been called terrorism that were likely propagated by the United States government, perpetrated by the United States government, conjured by the United States government. Main point number 2, with regard to my opposition to the body scanners and the molestation, is whatever terrorist threat does exist has been exacerbated callously by the United States government. That is, the United States government has served to contribute to increasing the terror threat. So, for those of you who dismiss the aforementioned as the insane ramblings of a conspiracy nut, you are in luck. I will provide far more reasoning to invalidate the claims that the TSA molestation is for security. The United States funded the Mujahideen, which birthed Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a CIA creation. This is well documented as has been admitted by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who acted as National Security Advisor under Jimmy Carter. The purpose of this was to get the Soviet Union to attack Afghanistan, to instigate a jihad against them because of the U.S.'s animosity with the Soviet Union. So, surely whatever terror threat exists has been exacerbated dramatically, at the very least, by the fact the U.S. government created and has funneled massive sums of money to Islamic radicals. A further exacerbation of terrorism knowingly by the United States government can be viewed with Iraq. The United States government was well aware that the launching the invasion and subsequent mass slaughter campaign against Iraq, which has cost the lives of over 1.2 million people, 90% or so of whom are innocent, would increase, not minimize, the terror threat. The direct opposite of what they publicly claimed, that this was, part of the war on terror, etc. This is, of course, self-evident to anyone who can think, because when you murder children, their families tend to not become loving towards you. They attack you with a vengeance, and rightfully so, or at the very least, understandably so, in terms of how humans naturally react to when their loved ones are murdered. It has been said that if you weren't a terrorist prior to and during U.S. torture and murder campaigns, you may well be one now, having understandably been radicalized by the hell you have endured. This is a quote from Chomsky. In the eve of the Allied invasion, a classified report by the National Intelligence Council, the Intelligence Community Center for Strategic Thinking, predicted that an American-led invasion of Iraq would increase support for political Islam and would result in a deeply divided Iraqi society prone to violent internal conflict. Douglas Jail and David E. Sanger reported to the New York Times last September. In December 2004, Jail reported a few weeks later the NIC warned that Iraq and other possible conflicts in the future would provide recruitment, training grounds, technical skills, and language proficiency for a new class of terrorists who are professionalized and for whom political violence becomes an end in itself. Clearly, decimating Iraq and stealing their oil was so important that it outweighed any concern for terrorism, even though the specter of WMDs and Al-Qaeda was invoked completely fraudulently as the initial pretext for the invasion. The answer is to cease these actions, not to enslave the domestic population. To conclude this segment 2 of the argument, it is apparent that the United States government, quite to the contrary of caring about the safety of the citizenry and severity of the terror threat, have undertaken actions that actively and knowingly exacerbate said threat. I'm going to end this video here and continue with part 2 of my argument against the body scanners and molestation.